Today on Escape the Clock, we're aiming to answer the question, if retirement is supposed to be the golden years, why does the money keep turning into the biggest source of stress in people's lives? According to a 2025 annual retirement study, 64% of Americans worry more about running out of money than they do about death itself. That's not a math problem, that's a psychology problem. We spend our entire lives focused on the climb, saving, investing, pushing toward the summit. Then the paychecks, they stop. The savings start moving in the wrong direction. Costs keep climbing, though, and every withdrawal starts to feel like watching what we built shrink in real time. To answer this question, I'll be joined by someone who spent over 2 decades helping people engineer the descent. You'll hear my conversation with Connor Tyson. He's a chartered financial consultant and the founder of Progress Solutions LLC. Connor is the architect of the paycheck protocol. It's a framework that he designed to help replace that W-2 income with a predictable, repeatable flow of cash so that you stop withdrawing in fear, start spending with confidence. So today, we get into the specific moves that turn a portfolio into a paycheck. From the sequence of returns risk that quietly sinks early retirees, to the buckets, the guardrails, and the behavioral protocols that keep your plan intact when the market turns against you. I really appreciated Connor's clear and direct way of explaining these concepts, and I'm sure that you will as well. So stay tuned for my conversation with Connor Tyson and learn how to engineer a withdrawal strategy that actually works to send that summit with confidence and protect the financial independence that you're working so hard to live off of. Welcome back to Escape the Clock, the show where we highlight strategies and approaches for achieving financial freedom and having the option not to work. I'm your host, Daniel C. Rogers. It's easy to think that the easiest part of the financial journey is the climb. The bulk of our prime is spent in the working years, accumulating enough wealth to live off for the rest of our days. Yet the myth of the work ending once you reach your financial summit can be existential. We transition to our golden years, hoping we did enough to fund the lives we want for ourselves and for our loved ones. We hope that the work is over and the decumulation descent is a smooth glide. But the reality is that the descent is where most failures actually happen. Research shows that the first 5 years of retirement are the critical danger zone. But what if the cash continued to flow when the paycheck stopped? What if you had a system that replaces W-2 income with a predictable flow of assets? One that alleviated the need to withdraw in a down market or live in fear of inflation or the loss of benefits. Well, today's guest is here to help us explore a framework for just that. Connor Tyson is a personal financial coach, also a chartered financial consultant with over 22 years of experience. He is the founder of Progress Solutions LLC and now focuses on empowering people with the habits and behaviors needed to build true wealth. Connor, welcome to Escape the Clock.
Thanks for having me on, Dan.
Awesome. I like this Everest metaphor to describe the retirement journey because it does feel like a climb as we grind our way up the mountain. And then we just hope for this smooth journey back down. But I'd love you to kind of take us back a little bit because you've been doing this for quite a while, helping lots of people here. When did you realize that most people kind of feel stranded at the summit because they never actually made a plan for how to get back down?
Well, it's not that they haven't made a plan, right? It's just that it's human nature to avoid those things you don't understand, right? And I used to deliver a lot of financial plans, and all the answers based upon the inputs were on page 67 of the plan, right? How much you need to save a month, this is what you need to do. But very few people are actually taking action. And I realized that, like, wow, what is it about this that's really holding people back? Number one is that it's complicated, right? Like the industry itself is scary, right? They use terms like standard deviation, asset allocation, bibbity bobbity boo, right? And it freezes people in tracks. They know they need it, but they don't know how to implement it or truly understand what it is that they're doing, right? I used to ask people all the time, like, why do you own it and how does it benefit you? And I would get blank stares. And I was like, well, my advisor told me. I was like, okay. So I had to really simplify, take something that's really complicated and simplify it so people understood what they were doing, why they were doing it, when to do it, so on and so forth, so they could take action. because like knowledge is power, right? So if you give the people the knowledge of what they're doing, why they're doing it, when they're doing it, they're empowered to take action because they understand for themselves what they're doing and why they're doing it. Yeah, that was basically the missing ingredient. And then I was able to explain it pretty quickly to people. And the rest is history, as they say. But then I also realized it's really habits and behaviors. It's not knowledge. I talk about this a lot. Like most of your listeners now know what to do. If you asked anybody, right, spend less than I make, save, invest, give, avoid debt. Yeah, okay. They know this. But why is it that when it comes to this topic, or you see the statistics out there, right? Why is that, right? So it's really habits and behaviors of aligning it with their principles and values so they're motivated to take action.
Knowledge plus discipline.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Or
what it's
applied knowledge, right? Like all the
applied
YouTube
knowledge.
videos are great, but like, what did you do with that information?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Before we get into all the way you help people calculate these withdrawals and
Yeah.
replace that paycheck, I'd love to start a little bit though, or with the ascent pieces, because you do have this interesting framework for
Mhm.
recreating a paycheck without work. And I think a lot of people think, like you said, right? It's about, okay, well, save some, and make sure I do that match, make sure I invest something. And I do notice a lot of strategies are hope. Hope you have
Yeah,
enough.
opium. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would love to hear more about your framework first and how you're ensuring there's enough money there so that people
Yeah.
can actually withdraw from the right places and make it
Yeah.
last.
So the ascent piece, which is the climb, right? We're trained early on, save, 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 401k, automate, so on and so forth. Hopefully you're doing that. But the biggest thing is when you're doing financial planning, the first number they ask you is how much, because that's the input. That's what the whole linear plan is based upon. And they usually give you round numbers. Like, oh, put me down for 100, put me down for 120,000. And it's garbage in, garbage out. And life is not linear, number one. So the first habit or behavior is budgeting, like awareness of where your money's going at any juncture of your life. And then making sure that you're on track to have it automated where you're saving the right amounts in the right areas. The other thing is looking at the descent before you even approach it, right? So I make the descent very simple to understand. So you're climbing this mountain called retirement or saving one day, where it's working by choice, not by necessity, is really what it is. But most people also choose to do something part time in retirement because it's just sit around and watch, TV all day. You can't do that. So I break it up into three phases, which is like the go years, the slow go years, and then the no go years, right? So you're seeing things, you're traveling, you're probably 65 to like 80, 75. Slow go years, 75 to 85, 80-ish. That's when the grandkids are coming to you instead of you visiting them. And then the no-go years is everybody's coming to you. You're not going to Christmas. You're like they're coming to you, right? And that's really what it is. And you want to fund the first piece of that, the go-go year, because that's you have to also give yourself permission to spend down the money. That's what it's for. That's what you've been saving for all these years. The ascent is also just automating it. Like a lot of people have decision fatigue, right? You're living. You have two kids. I have two kids. And it's, you work all week, you're taking kids to events, you're working overtime, you're doing all this stuff, oh, family vacation, you got to do this camp. And who wants to sit down and really look at a hardcore budget with their significant other or themselves on a Friday night? You don't want to do it, right? So you have to automate a lot of these things. So the decision fatigue is not there. You have two types of people, right? All the plans and no resources, all the resources and no plans is really what it comes down to. So it's a lot easier to work with people that have all the resources and no plan because then you can actually frame it in a way that makes sense for them. And the word retirement too, like what does that mean for everybody? I don't know. I think of shuffleboard in Florida, but it's really how do I recreate the income without working as much and live the life I want? That's like the go-go years.
For some of those people that are planning, right? Maybe let's assume someone's in their accumulation phase right now. They're
Yep.
still working. Maybe they have a good, 10, 20 years left of work.
Yeah.
How much should they be expecting things like Social Security as part of their plan or
The
um,
big piece.
yeah, it's a big piece. Like, do you feel like that's something you need to mitigate, or do you feel like that is something that everyone should be able to comfortably have as part of their plan?
There's the math of it, and then there's like the socio, economics of it also. Like there would be complete riots and pitchforks and everything else in the streets over this, right? But legislation will probably be passed. That's my own personal opinion to keep that going. It is, they've rated it and it's not good mathematically, but if you, it's up to them personally. It's not up to me to what I think. If you don't want to plan for it, then don't plan for it, right? Will it be reduced? Maybe there's other alternatives. They can, increase the age. They can take off the limit of income of how much is taxed for Social Security. There's a lot of things they can do before that happens, but it's definitely going to be a piece of the retirement picture. It's not going away 100%.
What about the person who's like, well, I wish I could have a pension, but I don't have access to get a pension. I want some fixed income. And
Yeah,
what other assets might people consider?
yeah. So you can you can recreate your own pension, right? So you can take equity assets and turn them into a pension themselves if you wanted to. So what a pension is just a stream of income you don't outlive. When you die, it stops. That's what that is, right? So you can actually create your own pension if you wanted to. You're kind of speaking to the four big pieces of the retirement income strategy, but there's four buckets, right? Social Security, pension, which is going away, fixed assets, and equity assets, right? And if you look at those four buckets, and I said, okay, pick any two you want, 90% of the people are like Social Security and pension. Why? It's fixed, it's guaranteed, it's pretty simple to understand. Yeah, you
It's
can look up the
comfortable.
numbers, there's a lot of strategies, right?
Yeah.
The other two are variable, scary. You have market risk, you have a whole bunch of things, right? Where you can convert a portion of your equity assets into a pension if you wanted to. Not all of it, but a piece of it. Because pensions, inflation. You have to have a
Right.
hedge against inflation.
You mentioned variable. I'd love to pick on that a little bit, because life is very variable.
Yeah.
Things like healthcare comes up a lot. People seem very worried about healthcare
Yeah.
uh, to a degree that sometimes can be a little irrational, to be honest,
Mhm.
because it's an expense. But, I think when your job takes care of it for so long and it's something on you later, I guess it can be scary to deal with. But how do people think about all those variable costs in life when there's so many unknowns in the
It's an
future?
insurance, right? And you protect those things you can't afford to lose. And if you are single and you don't have anybody take care of you, yeah, I would definitely take a insurance policy out or self-fund that or get a product. There's definitely one that addresses it out there to address that concern of yours in your retirement or whatever that is in your lifeline.
So let's say people, they use the framework. They're, they have Social Security to some degree and their plan. They're able to do the right amount of savings.
Hmm.
They maybe they do a mix of a CD ladder and an annuity. They have stuff
Hmm.
set up and they've done the plan. They feel like, okay, I'm going to have enough. Charles Schwab did this survey last year where they said reported 1 in 4 retirees who retired in the last decade said that they weren't financially prepared for the transition from
Financially
accumulation
prepared.
to spending. Yeah, it didn't feel prepared. There's a psychological shift that happens.
Hmm.
I know you teach about the rule of 72 here a bit to help calculate spending rates. I was wondering,
Hmm.
like, do you see that as part of what helps people feel more comfortable? Because look, there's three things you can do with money, right? You can save it, you can spend it, you can give it. Saving
Hmm.
it, it's hard to do, and it's kind of hard to shift the gear out of saving into spending for a lot of people. Is
Yeah,
it more of a math thing, or is there something else that needs to happen here?
it's definitely psychological, right? So you have to give yourself permission to why you're saving the money in the first place and understand that you've been saving for 40 years for this goal of basically financial independence to do what you want to do when you want to do it. Give yourself permission to do it, right? If you think you're going to die with the amount of money you started with or more without spending the money in retirement over, I don't know what the average retirement is, but it's definitely more than 10 years. There's two ways to go about it. One is capital preservation, right? Which is very difficult to do if you don't mitigate those risks through giving yourself permission to get out of the market when it's going down, right? Like I'm a big proponent of like you can ride the market, right, up and down, the buy and hold strategy, but like why would you buy and hold? Why would you hold during a downtime? I don't understand that. Like I've never had anybody explain to me why because like oh you can't predict when it's going back up, but you know it's going back up. That's why you're holding, right? So why wouldn't I just sell a piece of that portfolio where it's in cash and preserving capital versus writing it down 30%, right? Real money managers sell. They do. right? And there's algorithms and indicators out there now that tell you the market's bad, market's good, right? Green light, red light. So money management is a big piece of this where you can delegate that to professionals to preserve your capital. And if it's buy and hold, the only argument I've heard is like, well, you don't know when to get back in. Not necessarily. I mean, there are some big indicators of when things are getting better, right? Employment rate, this, that, the other thing, where you have a good idea and you don't do everything overnight. You don't go 100% cash. You do it in tranches of money. So you preserve that capital. But back to what you were talking before about the rule of 72. Let's just say over the 40 years, you've accumulated all your equity assets, right? Most people maybe downsize. Let's say you have $1 million, right, at this point of everything. You would actually give yourself permission to spend $500,000 of that. Why? Because the other half, the rule of 72, if you get the average S&P 500 rate of, what is it, 9% or 10%, that's going to double in 9 to 10 years. So what do you do in 9 to 10 years? You just reload is what you do. You have $1 million again, and then you just reload the equity assets and you keep that stream of income coming in, but you're going to spend it down because that's the goal of the money.
It sounds like what you're describing is knowing your safe withdrawal rate because you could do the math.
Yeah. I mean, withdrawal rate or more like time frame, because like life again is not linear, right? So a fixed withdrawal rate is not going to line up with your life. Sometimes you need more money
Yeah.
in the go-go years than you need the slow-go years. Or like you said, healthcare, right? Like, oh, my advisor said not to take a withdrawal rate of more than 5%. Well, yeah, you need it. Where are you going to get the money? You have to sell assets or do something or work. It's a finite resource. And if you have it, yeah, you're going to have to spend it to live the life you want.
Well, talk about liquidity buffers, because I know if you had a nice cushion, you could not have to feel like you're forced to.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that too. The average bear market lasts somewhere between, I think it's 9 to 13 months or 14 months or something like that. If you had that amount of cash, you could weather that bear market without stopping the income or the amount of money you need to live off of, and you don't have to spend down any assets. And then when the market goes up, good. Now it's going back up. All right.
Is that what you advise? 1 year cost of living?
Yeah, you definitely want to have some cash. Those who have liquidity and cash have options. If you don't have cash and liquidity, you don't have many options. Like most of my clients wanted to have flexibility and options of what to do, when to do it.
It's also your opportunity money as well.
Mm-hmm.
It might not even be about withdrawal. It might be about investment. You never know. It's nice to have the option.
Yeah, it is. So I used to do this presentation. I don't know. I've retired thousands of people, and it's like you don't have to complicate it very hard, right? So we were talking about those pieces, the puzzle pieces. You have Social Security, pension, fixed assets, and equity assets. In the middle of those 4 buckets, if you can think of a piece of paper, in the upper left-hand corner, you have Social Security. Lower left-hand corner, you have pension. Upper right-hand corner, fixed assets. Lower right-hand corner, equity. In the middle of that page, you just put a dollar sign, a paycheck. Right? How much do I need to live off of on a regular basis? To answer that question, you should be hopefully budgeting, telling your money where to go versus wondering where it went, all that stuff. And on top of that, so you have a good idea. And most people are like, oh, you're going to live on 80% of your income. Why would you give yourself a pay cut if you didn't have to? So live the lifestyle that you want, but this is going to dictate how much you can live off of, right? So Social Security, we used to get a green and white piece of paper in the mail. We don't have it anymore. You can actually go to their website, look up the estimates based upon your age, when you want to retire and how much you'd actually collect for maybe you and your spouse. So let's say you want to live on $120,000 a year, just keep numbers simple and round to get the concept across. You'd have $10,000. You got to make $10,000. So Social Security, probably between a married couple or so, would be like $3,500. Let's just call it, let's say it's $2,000 each, right? $4,000. So you have $6,000 left. Pension, you may or may not have it. 0. Let's just put a 0 there. You have fixed assets. These are things that pay you a fixed amount of income for a fixed period of time. Those are bonds, CDs, things of that nature. You live on the dividends of those, okay? You live on the interest. Then you have equity. This is everything you own, okay? This is the house. You might downsize, unlock some of the equity in that. Your 401k, IRA, your stocks, right? Whatever that number is, whatever is remaining. So in that illustration, we need $6,000. $6,000 of $500,000, how long would that last? That would be 300 months. $6,000, you would spend that down over that period of time. And then The other monies, the half of it is growing in a diversified portfolio. And within 10 years or so, or probably nine, it would double. A good hedge against inflation, which is the cost of living going up, is equities. So if you have equities, it's a hedge against the inflation, it's growing. And then within 10 years, if you need more or less, you're probably going to spend less, but you would just reload. You would take that other half of money and spend it down. You have to keep it really simple. If you overwhelm and confuse people, they're always going to second doubt what they're doing and not take any action and be freaked out, like the Charles Schwab study indicated.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have told them that, but
No, I love what you're covering here. I do think a lot of people, they kind of pick their poison a little bit though.
yeah,
To be honest, I noticed like there are people that are like, okay, I'm gonna just do it with dividends, and then they just go all in on dividends until they can get
yeah.
to
I
their numbers.
mean, but you have every strategy has pros and cons and risks. Retirement isn't cookie cutter in that if I don't have a top appetite for risk or volatility, I'm not going to want to have the majority of my assets in equity assets in the market risk. So maybe I take a portion of that and put it into an annuity, a bad word, right? To guarantee income to supplement my retirement, my social security income. So I know come hell or high water, this money is guaranteed. Every third Thursday of the month, I have this amount at least. Okay, great. Where are you going to make up the other piece? Maybe in the go-go years you work part-time. Maybe, I don't know. But you definitely need to save and also give yourself permission to spend down the money. If you
That,
don't, it's going to be very, 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 very difficult.
that part's huge. I think a lot of people, like I was, people in the fire community, this comes up a lot. They calculate
Mhm.
this magic 4%,
Mhm.
25 times, or some magic cost of living that they think will stay the same, and hopefully inflation is what it is, and then you get to a point where it's like, well, I just saved for the past 20 years, but now I don't
Mhm.
know how to spend.
Correct.
Help me. And it's like the sacrifice life gets stuck in your mind, and there's a shift that has to happen. With that, is it as simple as just giving yourself permission, or is there
No,
do you want to hold you
it's not. So I
accountable?
actually had a client that just recently retired, and I was like, you need to take like a week and get a dream book out and think about what are you going to do to stay socially active? What are you going to do to stay healthy? What are you going to do? What are the things you wish you could have done while you were working or you're staring out the window? You have the opportunity to do these things, right? And it was almost he came back with like, over 50 ideas. I was like, great. I was like, now let's just pick two and do some research of how much would it be? When do you want to do it? Is there anybody you want to take with you? Where if I told them they wouldn't believe it, if they say it, they believe it and they take action, right? Because it's within themselves. They want to do it. They've been thinking about doing it. And it's like if you have the resources to do it, you only go around the block once. And yeah, I wouldn't deny myself that which I've been working for 40 years to do.
Yeah, for sure. I
So
love
yeah,
for you
it's
to.
more psychological. It is. It's not the numbers things you and I can figure out. It's more of the psychological, right? Dealing with the what am I going to do to stay busy, fear, what ifs, the what ifs in life, right? There's a
Yep,
whole industry built on that. And if you live in
absolutely.
a place of fear, yeah, you're not going to be very happy and sure of what you're doing and why you're doing it because there's always a what if, right?
I'd love you to talk a little bit about the phases a little here, because early retirement, I think people understand that you can't rely on your retirement accounts. You have to do, asset location matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
The money needs to be in the right place. And when I help some people, they're kind of wake up to the fact that they over put money in a 401k,
Yeah.
and way, 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 way too much pre-tax money in one place. And
Mm-hmm.
that really limits their ability to create some of the cash flow that we're talking about here. And then they're dealing with a bit of a tax problem about conversions, and a bunch of stuff gets in there. But
Yeah.
I think people would be interested to know, well, how do I think about putting this stuff in the right place to make this easy on myself later? How would you help them?
Yeah. So you want to think about buckets of liquidity. So if you're going to retire prior to 59 and a half, you don't want to deal with the rules of 59 and a half, which is most employer ERISA plans out there, 401k, 403b, IRA, so on and so forth. There's penalties. The key word is tax deferred. Deferred till when you take it out, then you're taxed. Can you predict the tax rate at that time? No. Do I think it's going up? Yeah, probably. Yeah, most likely because the government's spending money like a drunken sailor and they're not going to stop anytime soon. So, what could I do to have some tax strategies or lessen the burden of that, right? So, you have taxable, which is tax now at long term capital rates. You have Roth IRA, Roth, tax free. I like that. Tell me some more about that. And then you have tax deferred. Those are the three buckets of money. And you can have supplemental rental properties and so on and so forth, but that's income. That's reportable income. So if you're going to retire prior to 59 and a half, you need liquidity and reduce the tax burden as much as possible. Then you have Social Security doesn't start until you're 62, right? Okay, 62. And then Medicare only kicks in at 65. I got to bridge the gap from 62 to 65. What do I do with that? Where do I get those assets? So you have to kind of gap it out to when you want to retire, right? So if the other thing that's funny about the fire community is they want to, it's, financially independent, retire early. Retire early. It's in the name. What are you going to do to fill your time? Hopefully do some fun stuff that's going to cost money. But like the other thing too is if you pay taxes, it means you made money in the United States. It's not such a bad thing. So let's just reduce the amount of taxes you have to pay while you're using the money. You can put most of it, like you said, Roth conversions and so on and so forth. But sooner or later, you're paying the tax, right? Especially if you're doing a conversion. It's tax deferred. You're converting it to tax free. They tax that amount that you converted. That's the gamble you take.
Yeah. Yeah. The IRS is going to get their cut no matter what.
No matter what. And if they don't, they get it when you die, right? So
yeah, I'd love to ask you this question around the kinds of behavioral habits people should be, looking for here, right? Some of this is a bit of self-awareness. We can kind of hold each other accountable and help each other as well. But
yeah.
what are the behavioral habits that predict both success and failure when it comes to building up enough and then knowing that you're making it last, you're doing the right things?
Yeah, you want to be proactive is a behavior, intentional. You want to have clarity or awareness. That's done through, I hate the B word, budgeting or money planning. You have to plan out your money. You either tell your money where to go or it's going to tell you where it went. Simple as that, right? It's a horrible, horrible master, great servant, right? So if you want to do these things, it's just like I've heard this one, more people put more time in planning family vacations than they do their retirement. And
Right.
that's been my experience. Like it's scary where all of a sudden one day you wake up, you're 65. Okay, I'm just going to retire. It doesn't work like that, right? So you need to have an idea approaching that descent or that launch point of I have enough resources in my lifeboat to leave the cruise ship, regardless of what size waves hit me. I have enough supplies where I can actually leave the cruise ship and go on my own lifeboat because you don't know what the seas have ahead of you. But if you don't have anything, you've just been willy nilly, like just throwing things in, hopefully it sticks. You're gonna find out, yeah, I need to go back to work, or this is not what I thought it was going to be. So proactive, intentional, and if you have a good pulse on where your money's going and the growth rates and taxes and stuff like that, you'll be in a much, much, much better position than those who do not.
Yeah. So is it the autopilot kind of blinders on that you see, which is the people who are getting themselves in trouble here? Are they just like the lack of plan?
It's both.
Yeah.
So the reason why they do the automation and all, like the apps and right, is to make life easy, right? Like, oh, let me just automate it. They don't check it. It's automated where life changes behind the scenes. And I couldn't tell you how many times I've sat down and they're like, oh, I didn't know I was spending $300 on subscriptions a month because I haven't checked it in 8 years. It's just been on auto. Like, yeah, it's by design. They want you to
Exactly.
stay asleep at the wheel and not checking it, right? And it's like, what's the last time you looked at your home and auto insurance? Like, I don't know, since I bought my house. Like, okay. So you want to do a little bit of an audit at least once or twice a year, I would
Yeah.
think,
I did twice. Yeah.
where you're having a pulse of is your money doing what you want it to do? And is it aligned with your principles and values? And you have to take some time and think about that stuff. Like to me, my family is very, very important to me. So I put that as the top priority. right? So it's summer camp for the kids. It's gymnastics. I put those things away ahead of fixing up the porch. And I'm okay with it. And my wife's on board with it because we've already discussed this. And it's not playing whack-a-mole with our bills and playing catch up. It's intentional. We're driving the car, not just a passenger in it. And I try to make it as simple as possible. Like you can complicate a lot of things in life. This is not that complicated. They try to make it complicated to sell you stuff. It's true. They want you to be dependent upon them for the answers to sell you stuff as solutions. And when they hear things that you really, really crave, like I want security. Oh, I got that. This is guaranteed income for blah blah, right? They know this. But it's like, let's actually put some ideas to paper and figure out the pieces. And then the unknown is not that big of the piece. It's not that big of the puzzle, right? You have Social Security, you can have some fixed income through pension or convert some of your equity assets. How much is the paycheck? What are we trying to solve for here? How long does it have to last? Okay, what happens if? What happens if? What happens if? I don't know, but there's a product out there that can definitely put your mind to ease on that one particular risk. But you have to have a general idea of where things are going and where you stand in relationship to that.
Thing I love about doing that is it not only do you end up naturally optimizing when you look at where your cash is going, but you start to get a gut about what is your high utility spending, like what is
Yeah,
worth spending your money on, right? You have a finite amount of money you're going to have in your life, and to know that you put that in a place that brought some actual happiness to you or your family or whatever it was. And yeah, and that helps you kind of calibrate your savings and how to spend later in life, because you're like,
correct.
well, I know I want to spend this much on experiences because I always got more out of that. I kind of feel like that exercise is the hygiene that sets you up for success here a bit, both on calculating your numbers and, ensuring you're okay, and, kind of calibrating, like I said. How, for you personally,
Yeah.
do you budget twice a year? Like, how are you doing this for
Yeah,
yourself?
so I do a monthly family budget.
Okay.
So we sit down, we have a Tyson Incorporated business meeting. We don't keep it because it's not my money, your money. It's our money. And we take care of the needs, right? Food, shelter, utilities, medicine. Okay, those are all covered. Insurance, got it. Then it's wants. What are our wants? So it's family first, family vacation. We pay ourselves first for that. Sports, all those different things for the kids. We start saving for camp, Christmas, right? Make sure that we're not stressed out. And then we have a priority list. It's like a dream list of things that you'd want. She has five, I have five. We put them together. Hopefully they match. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then we attack one together as a team. And once that's done, we cross it off. How's our emergency fund? Oh, we had to go fix the boiler in the dishwasher. Okay, great. Let's replenish that. That's our goal, right? And we start accomplishing things together as a team. High five, great hugs and kisses. Let's go on to the next thing. And yeah, there's curveballs. I'm not perfect, but they become inconveniences, not crises. It's a good place to be where I'm teaching my kids about this stuff. It's a-okay. Like you have to have some principles or operating systems of how, like, do you lend money to relatives? I don't know. Let's think about this before this happens, right? Do we use credit cards? Yes. Okay, great. We do. What's the rule around that? We're going to pay it off within 26 days. Okay. Right. We use it as a leverage tool, not a necessity. So to answer your question, yes, we budget once a month before the month starts, proactive. We communicate regularly on a weekly basis. We have a 15-minute stand-up meeting. You need anything taken off your plate? How are we doing with this? Did you call the cell phone company to reduce? Yes, I did. What would they say? Great. Keep it moving. Now, is that money saved? No. Why? Because we haven't told it what to do. It's going to sit around waiting for instructions or just find a place to go in our life. So, great. We saved $68 on our cell phone. What do you want to do with that money? Let's put it towards the college education. Okay, done. Next week, I will automate $68 increase into the 529 plan.
Amazing. Wow. You really
And that's,
optimized your cash flow.
yeah, you got to optimize it. And then most people unfortunately, are reactive, right? And they feel a victim to those things outside of their control. Where I'd say less than half of it's really out of their control.
Well, listeners who might be interested in learning more about this or getting help from you on it, how can they connect with you?
Yep. So the best place to meet up with me would be on my website, It's www.progress, like you want to make some progress, FC, which stands for financial coaching.com. So progressfc.com. Everybody gets a free consultation. It's just a conversation about where you're at, what you're struggling with, what you need. And there's a lot of tools and resources on there. Catch me on social media. It's Connor, the financial coach.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your decades of wisdom and experience with us on this topic. I think hopefully folks will feel better about getting to the summit there and knowing that
it's a great journey. Believe that.
In my conversation with Connor Tyson, what struck me was just how badly we are all trained for half of the financial independence journey. We spend 40 years learning to climb by saving more, investing, and pushing towards that summit. And then at the moment that we're supposed to start enjoying everything that we worked so hard to build, the entire game itself just changes. And almost nobody's practiced for that. And it's not a small problem. According to recent research published by Kiplinger this year, the average 65-year-old couple with at least $100,000 in investable assets withdraws only 2.1% of their savings annually. Single retirees are even more conservative at 1.9%. That is roughly half of what financial models consider safe. After decades of saving, working, and sacrificing, most retirees with means get to the summit and completely freeze. They're not running out of money, they're running out of permission to allow themselves to spend it. And I think that Connor put it pretty plainly. This isn't a math problem, it's a psychology problem. And the only way to solve a psychology problem is with a system clean enough that you actually trust it. Like I put together in Escape the Clock, he aimed to simplify this to help boost the confidence that people need to take the leap. His framework starts with 4 buckets, the ones that most of us already have access to: Social Security, pension, if you're one of the few people who still have access to that, fixed assets like CDs and bonds and the interest that those are giving, and then equity assets. These are things like your 401ks, your IRA, taxable brokerage, and even the equity in your house. In the middle of these 4 buckets sits the only number that actually matters, though, and that's that monthly paycheck that you need to live the life that you actually want. That single shift from net worth to monthly paycheck, that's the shift that changes everything. $1 million can feel very fragile. $6,000 a month coming in, that on the other hand can feel like a job that doesn't require you to ever show up to work. That can be quite liberating. And on top of that, Connor layers the 3 phases. He mentioned the go-go years. This is when you're traveling and exploring and doing the things that you deferred for 40 years. Then there's the slow go years. This is when the grandkids start coming to you instead of the other way around. And then finally, there's the no-go years, when home becomes the destination and your spending naturally just drops. And each of these phases, these have different cost profiles, which means a flat withdrawal rate is almost guaranteed to be wrong for your actual life. There's no way costs will be exactly the same constant number in all these different years when your life just acts so differently. And so the piece I keep coming back to is what Connor called the reload. If you have $1 million and you give yourself permission to spend half of it in your go-go years, and then the other half invested at a long-term equity growth rate, which is doubling roughly every 9 years, now you might feel better about spending it down because you know the other half is doing the work. Then you reload when the timer goes off. And that is not magic at all. This is actually very comfortable, proven stuff that many of us financial advisors talk about all the time. It's called the rule of 72. And in his case, his framework is helping you apply it with intention. But none of that works without the part that Connor pounded on the hardest, which is behavior. I talk about this a lot as well. If you're not intentionally planning and telling your money where to go, then it will just go places on its own. And you will sometimes scratch your head at trying to figure out where it went. For instance, think about running a budget like a business meeting. He was talking about even having 15-minute weekly stand-ups with his family. And I know not everyone's going to go to that degree, but honestly, businesses try to treat finances as a budget. They treat spending as an expense to be managed. Why do we want to take and put the risk in when so many others have proven there's these mechanisms to remove it? So audit your insurance and your subscriptions twice a year at least. Keep enough cash on hand to weather an average bear market or maybe layoffs. Historically, around 9 to 14 months of liquidity can make all the difference in psychological safety. Because when that market turns, you don't feel forced to sell at the bottom. But if you do, you're still generating more liquidity and cash to make some moves. Those three habits, the proactive, the intentional, and the aware, are what separate retirees who burn through their savings from the ones who underspend out of fear. Both groups are missing the point. The point of all of this work is not to die with the largest pile. It is to live the life that you spent 40 years funding. That is the financial freedom part. That requires a system. The 4 buckets, the free phases, the reload, the cash buffer, the family business meeting. These are not just Connor's tools. They can become anyone's tools the moment you decide the descent deserves the same engineering that you gave to the climb to get there. I'd love to hear from you. Which part of the descent worries you the most? Is it the math? Is it the timing? Or is it the permission to actually spend the money? Email me at contact@escapetheclock.com or leave a comment wherever you listen. I'm Daniel C. Rogers. Thank you so much for listening and best of luck engineering your paycheck, escaping the clock. I'll see you next week. That's a wrap on this episode of Escape the Clock. Everything you've heard today is for educational purposes only, designed to help you think, plan, and build a stronger financial program. Take what resonates, bring it into your Escape the Clock plan, and review it with a qualified professional before making any major moves. The book, the free planner, and the one-on-one time with me are all waiting for you at escapetheclock.com. If this episode was valuable, please leave a rating, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll catch you next week.